Hey now, House from bestrevenuewriter.com here, bringing you another fantastic episode of the Revenue Writers Podcast. Trust you're having a fantastic day today. As we talked about a few episodes back, one of the most important skills that organizations and marketers are looking for right now is the ability to pivot. Now, I have to chuckle a little bit at this term because that word has become synonymous, at least in my eyes and my personal experience, to mean we don't know what we're doing, we need to switch game plans, but the ability to be able to adjust on the fly, the ability to abandon ineffective tactics, that is what being able to pivot means. As you most likely know, but I'm stating this to show that we're on the same page here. I don't gain anything by having the hipster view of the word. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about pivoting. I have an interesting take for you today, whether or not you are in the B2B world, but if you're a corporate executive, the chances of you dealing with third-party agencies, whether it's digital marketing or another service, are pretty high. So you'll still be able to relate to this, and you'll still be able to draw the lessons from this as well. So I'm going to tell you a great strategy on how to be able to pivot. This is going to be especially helpful for B2B startup founders, especially ones that just started post-pandemic, and you're wondering, how do I create a sales process? How do I create a digital marketing process from scratch? What do I absolutely need? What should I avoid? There's a lot of questions that go into it. In fact, I have a checklist of over 160 things that I look for when just building a business development process from scratch. It is that intensive. Now, having worked at a major digital marketing agency that started off as just 7 or 8 people and then seeing it grow all the way to 60 plus and then to being acquired and then having an organization of 400 plus people in over 7 different countries, it was a unique experience to watch how things would grow over the years and the problems that come along with growth. At the time when it was about 20 people at this stage of the growth, our process was built on outbound sales, talking to digital marketing executives, Fortune 500 companies, or hot new startups that had a lot of investment potential. At the time, the way that our sales was structured was 5 or 6 business development reps. They would set meetings, whether it was through cold email, cold calling, or on social media. Think LinkedIn, messaging, or Facebook. So it was every man and woman for themselves. They get the lead, they work with the closer, they hold the intro call, and then it was kind of just poof after that point. There wasn't really a nurturing process, and the reason for that was we were very thin on resources. The way that it was set up, it made a lot of sense for where we were as a company at the time. Having a competitive environment, which is actually the reason that I was transferred over into this department from doing client execution, where I was an SEO link builder and handled large accounts like Fruit of the Loom, Hanes, Toyota, so on and so forth. But having a spark plug go back there and ignite the competition to where there was high volume and high activity to get the word out. Not many people knew about our agency, even though there was a legacy brand behind it. But eventually you get to a point in growth where the competition amongst each other isn't productive for the company. And that's the point that we had run into. Because just how many Fortune 500 companies are there? Fortune 500, there's 500 of. So you end up going through a lot of leads. You end up reaching out to the same people, and your best bet at that point is to hope the people that are shutting the door on you move on from the company and a new decision maker comes in. If you're a corporate executive listening to this, then you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Now, from this point, as a business development representative, you want to make sure that you have the best leads. You want the biggest companies. You want to have a shot to win a deal with the biggest brands. The problem with that is that as you start to go through your lead list, it draws a certain amount of resentment and a hyper-competitiveness that ends up leading to internal problems. Now, seeing this early and seeing how it started to develop, I figured this out. I was able to predict this ahead of time just by seeing just how the dynamics were starting to unfold. I knew that it wasn't sustainable. So we had a pretty tough time in our company history, and at one point, it looked like we weren't even going to make it. We had lost 4 or 5 major accounts resulting in millions and millions of dollars. And as a CEO, you start to wonder, is this investment worth it? When you start to have to reduce staff and you see people walking by you with boxes every day, you get a little bit nervous. So we needed to make some changes. We needed to pivot. And I sat down with the CEO, very intelligent guy, wildly successful background, started one of the first digital marketing agencies. Well, I had a conversation with him and said, look, this is the hardcore truth about what's going on. This is how you fix it. I know it's going to be some hard decisions. It's going to go against everything you've ever believed in. And you know what you're doing, but this is a different era. We're at a different stage of growth. Here's what needs to happen. At this time, it was just me in the department. We basically did a scorched earth policy. The way that it was built from there was creating a team setting. Instead of being competitive with each other, we are competitive against our actual competitors in the market. And what that did is it created a singular goal for everybody in the department. You didn't have to worry about whose lead was whose. Everybody in the department was working towards this one goal. If there were those days that you were unmotivated or somebody's performance was slipping, you could count on the person to the left and right of you to pull you up or cover for you for that day, knowing that they would get you back. And so what it did was it created an accountability beyond oneself. It made sure that everybody brought their A game, because if they didn't, then they were letting their team down. And it created a unity unlike anything. One of the best feelings, even if you've never played sports, there's a reason why sports is so addicting and why so many people wear jerseys like tribal gear. As humans, we like to overcome challenge together. We find it very rewarding, and whether that's from 10,000 years ago, who knows what it truly is, but there's something about us that likes to win with our team. And when you have a hyper-competitive team, when you're trying to grow as a company, and what ended up happening was this. At first, it was a little bit tough because we had to find out, okay, this person is going to do these roles, this person is going to do this role, KPIs that each person was responsible for, and then make sure that they aligned with the singular goal. For instance, if I said, I'm going to send 100 emails today, I'm going to place 100 calls, it should lead to one meeting or one lead, whatever it was, and the other person says, I'm going to make 2 pieces of sales enablement content per day. We had to make sure those things would work together and align to accomplish the goal. If not, we had to adjust it. Okay, well, this is what we're going to have to do then. But even from that point, it had to go over into a closer's hands. And then it had to go into strategy. I was a part of the strategy team, but also with my own department. So that's another way that we learned how to pivot, was by assigning roles to where you have an emotional investment in other departments and their success. We ended up having 4 times the profitability in new business wins. That doesn't even include the re-signs or upsells. But in strictly new business, we had the best years in company history. Had we stuck to the old methods, there's no way that the company would have been acquired. There's no way we would have grown that fast. And the key was we kept everything super light. And I don't mean as in the atmosphere or our attitude. I mean light in terms of capabilities, technology, our stacks. We didn't get too bought into one singular area. What we did was we kept our options open in terms of service lines that we were offering. Okay, should we offer link building? That is our strongest service that we offer, but are we missing opportunities for a connected approach to where we're going cross-channel? We kept all of those things in mind. We made sure that everything was focused on our prospect, that when we had an intro call, it was almost like we're getting a free consultation. In fact, we had many people tell us, why can't my agency even do this for free, even though we pay them? We paid them $20,000 to do something like this. And within 15 minutes, we learned more by your audits than we have with our current partners. They would end up becoming our client about 1.5 years later. So keep that in mind too. That's 18 months. But it ended up being almost $1 million contract at that point. That's why sticking it through, having patience in your B2B process is key, by the way. That's just a little side note. We ended up taking a very complicated sales CRM that tracked the data, completely stripping it out, and using just an Excel sheet for the time being. And there was a certain amount of freedom that came with that, because we realized there's going to be a couple areas where you're going to be weak, no matter what. It just happens. There's no such thing as a perfect process. There's going to be challenges. It was just about picking which challenges that we dealt with. We ended up getting about 5 times the amount of leads that we were seeing before. 92% of our intro calls were leading to second calls. If you're a corporate executive listening to this, how many times do you have an intro call and then never talk to that person again? Probably that's the most case scenario, right? So 92% is a big deal. Whereas something before it was maybe 10%, but we also had a certain buy-in as well. We knew that as long as we kept these numbers up, everybody was happy at the top and that we would have buy-in for new experimentations. And one of those big ones I like to call the Library of Alexandria, because what we did is we would audit all of the top brands that we were going after, and it ended up being a list of about 1,500 by the end of it. That's how many people we were reaching out to over the years. But here's the thing. It's public information, so it's not like we put it out there on a blog or anything. It was our own private information that we would use. So let's say that it was Best Buy, and we did a look at their keywords. We saw where they were ranking, how much they were spending on PPC, how much they were spending on social media, what types of ads they were running on social media, what campaigns, so on and so forth. 6 months down the road, we'd be able to refer back to that and say, okay, at this point, they were in this ranking. Now they've slipped 4 spots. They've reduced their spend by 20%. What's going on? Now, having that kind of insight across all of those different companies and being able to go back on that would not have been possible if we were constantly in competition internally because somebody would have been let go. The weakest performer would have been let go. We wouldn't have the type of buy-in to be able to build that library, which ended up becoming so crucial. We actually had people coming back to us saying, hey, did you do a report or have any analysis on our competitor X, Y, and Z? And we would say, absolutely, let's talk. So it was almost like an outbound, inbound type of lead. It wasn't anything where they found us naturally. It was something that we had actually told them that we had the capabilities of, and that's what our intro call would be about. But that was completely out of the realm possibility at the time. We would not have had the capabilities to create those graphics, create the analysis, and use those resources to do that. We would have just had 5 people out for themselves, survival of the fittest, but having that long-term buy-in was massive. It ended up paying off more than any other process or any other strategy, and it was built so quickly because we were so light. The other thing is, with our hiring, we were able to attract such top talent because we told them, this is the ideology of our department. This is why it's different from regular sales. We are going to help you develop. We want you to do well. We need you to do well, just like you need all of us to do well. We count on each other. It's like a team sport. And that was highly attractive to the younger generation because they didn't want to feel like they were being thrown out to the wolves. Here's the thing. It's not that they're lazy and entitled or weak-minded as they often get a rap. It's just a different preference. This is the online gamers that they do online gaming together in campaigns. It's about adapting the mentality. Generation X, to generalize, was more about the individuality. You see more with millennials, they like that sense of community. And that was a team based on solely young people. We tried the veteran experiment. We come to find out that a lot of the times that while useful with their experience and their knowledge of things, their inability, pivot, or unwillingness to was a detriment to our process. That's not to say that it's a shot at all older people. In fact, most are awesome that were in the workplace. It's anecdotal in the fact that it was the ones that our organization, ended up hiring that didn't work out. We had to make sure that, again, to pivot on our hiring strategy, that when we did hire, it would have to be younger, cheaper labor, as you would hear. Key was to train and develop and being able to adjust our program. So if we were to hire a massive corporate sales training program or a consultant, we'd be bought in to that training and development for whatever it is, a month, 3 months. Here, I was able to make the adjustments very quickly because we had such a loose agenda that I was able to format it to whoever our hire was based on their strengths, and then assign their position on the team based on those strengths. We had an exceptionally creative writer, so we would have them go in with the blog posts, sales enablement, craft some of the cold emails. So that was the ability at all times to be able to adapt to whatever challenge was in the way, come together as a team even, and then solve it. That's why it was so important. And I felt like that was a necessary story to share with you, simply because it shows that I'm not just talking about how to pivot. I'm showing you exactly what went into it and why, how it works successfully. And then what my definition of pivoting is. Our employee retention rate was 93%. And let me tell you this, the 7%, one out of that 7% was let go, and the other one, I lost out to Jesus. What I mean by that is he was a missionary and he had to go to China to spread the good word. I can't compete with Jesus. I don't care who you are. That's a tough one. So read into that what you will. People wanted to be there. They would tell their friends about it. We had applications rolling in. We never had a problem finding good talent. We had a problem selecting them because there were so many great candidates. Our hiring process, having to find the right candidates, if our hiring system had a lot of holes in it, just right then and there, that also came down to a certain amount of autonomy given to the department. I trusted in my team, the girls and the guys, to make those calls, sound judgment, and guess why? Because they knew the end result. They knew what decisions they had to make in order to get the job done. So how this can apply to you is simplifying the process doesn't just mean making things more clear or making KPIs more straightforward, such as, okay, we'll measure it on how many leads you get per month. That's a great way to reduce the amount of complicated KPIs where the advanced analytics just gets way too wacky. But what it really means too is thinking outside the box, being open to thinking outside the box, getting that kind of buy-in from the top. Of course, you're going to have to get the proof of concept to be able to keep that type of experimentation atmosphere going. But being able to pivot successfully comes from a great deal of top-down trust, a certain amount of autonomy, the willingness to take risks even though they might backfire, the willingness to go against all dogma. You can see examples in the story that I told you of how all of that came together. Many of the people on the team were not even salespeople at all. I was technically the only one that would qualify as traditional quote-unquote salesperson. The only one who came from minus one other person who, for a short period of time, placed cold calls, did outbound specialists, was an outbound specialist. Now, the corporate crowd, you guys might say, well, that sounds all fine and dandy, but that was different because it was a startup. There are very strict regulations. 100%, totally agree. That's why I'm saying that while you can't replicate, nor should you, because you're going to have different goals. But the point is that with your team, there are things that you can control, like giving more responsibility to people under you, not assuming the worst of them in terms of their inexperience. Give them that experience. Let them screw up a little bit. Let them make mistakes until they figure it out. You'd be surprised at the potential of your younger employees when given that opportunity, and then when telling them, hey, this is really important. You have to do this or else X happens. Cutting ties and knowing when to do so, but also understanding what got you in that position in the first place. Here are some very interesting insights as well. This is from HubSpot research. It goes along the lines of our last episode where we talked about social media channels, how live stream consumers are consuming the content. But check this out here. This table breaks down the channel, the motivations for the use, low performing content, and high performing content types. So for instance, first, Facebook. The motivations for use, discovering and communicating. The lowest performing content on Facebook is educational, news and current events. And the high performing content is hobbies/interests, humorous, sympathetic, and who I want to be. Number 2, Facebook Messenger. Communicating. News and / current events are the low performing content, and the high performing content, hobbies / interests, who I want to be, humorous and sympathetic. For Instagram, the motivations, bonding and discovering. The lowest performing content, news / current events, and educational. The highest performing content, humorous, hobbies and interests, who I see myself as. Snapchat, the motivations for use, bonding and communicating, low performing content, educational, warm and fuzzy. And the highest performing content, Snapchat, the motivations for use, bonding and communicating. Lowest performing content, news and current events. Highest performing content, hobbies / interests, warm and fuzzy, and who I see myself as. Twitter, Motivations, discovering and bridging. Lowest performing content, educational, warm, and fuzzy. And the highest performing content, hobbies/interests, who I see myself as, who I want to be. Last, YouTube, the motivations for use. Discovering the low performing content, humorous, warm, and fuzzy. And last, high performing content, who I want to be, educational, hobbies/personal interests. When I saw this, I was pretty surprised. I would have thought for YouTube that the lowest performing content would actually be their highest performing content. So having this diverse range of content and knowing what the purpose of it is, this could help you when you have to pivot on a, let's say, content marketing strategy, when you have to show a reason for why you want to take a different approach and go against perhaps a failed or underperforming campaign. Knowing that could give you some insight into why a particular channel wasn't as fruitful as you may have initially thought. The most outsourced task by companies is content creation. 80% of companies do this. Another report says that content creation is the most outsourced content marketing activity, with 84% of respondents reporting that they are likely to outsource it. Here's another fact from Elite Content Marketer. The most common content marketing team structure of B2C organizations is either a one-person team or no one is dedicated full-time to the role content marketing. So to recap, when we talk about pivoting and one of the most important channels and activities right now in marketing, which is content marketing, make sure to keep an open mind. Make sure to know your audience based on some of the insights that I gave you today. Hopefully, you have a new perspective, got the juices flowing about perhaps taking a little bit more of an experimental approach, trusting your team a little bit more with responsibilities deem them not ready for. Hopefully you see the power of being able to do the complete opposite of what is recommended and why it can pay off. It is complete blasphemy in the sales world to have a cohesive team environment, not where it's team A versus team B and everybody is actually secretly going against each other, but having the same goals and a singular goal. How powerful that can be when you go against the grain. Maybe the hipsters were onto something. Who knows? I thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're listening to this on right now. For all things premier, for premier content, B2B sales, and the wonderful world of business. No nonsense, straight to the point. Next episode, we're going to talk about common tactics that are the most effective. Going to be based on numbers. It's what very few organizations are doing, but the people that are reporting excellent results, so you don't want to miss it. We will see you next time. House out. We'll see you next time. I am House. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Ciao.